the way attachment experiences get internalized does then create an imaginative anticipation of relationship. We're constantly anticipating how the other will respond or not. And so it's actually all imagination.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is using the power of the imagination to create a new, what in attachment they would say, internal working model, which is our kind of anticipated responses from caregivers. And creating a new sense of inner security and feeling sense in the body through the power of imagination. So it's more focusing on the actual feeling of that ideal scenario than the image itself.
Today's guest is Jeffery, an integrative psychotherapist whose approach blends Eastern and Western philosophies to support individuals in their journey of personal growth and healing. Works with clients on a wide range of challenges, including depression, anxiety, grief, and relationship issues. Creates an inclusive space for LGBTQIA+ clients, and his work often explores topics of masculinity, sexuality, and identity. In this conversation, we'll dive into the integration of Eastern philosophy and Western psychotherapy, the power of ecotherapy and wilderness rites, and the therapeutic potential of group and interpersonal dynamics. You're listening to The Right Therapist, where we demystify therapy. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today. Thanks for joining us, Al.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Can you tell us a little bit about your work? Broad question.
Yes. Yeah, my work, I guess my interest has for a very long time in my life been around minds and psychology, as we'd probably typically think about that, and also about culture. And in this particular time where I've personally had many experiences of my own depressive states and chapters, I've been really curious about the intersection of culture and psychology and how we are made by our spaces. We also make them back. And so a lot of my work kind of plays at that edge between how do we focus on the very personal, on the kind of intrapersonal, the inner work, but also the interpersonal or the relational dimensions of change. And part of that's not to perpetuate this Western kind of psychological narrative that you have a problem and it's inside you and I can do something to fix that. I really don't find that very supportive or honoring of the capacity of humans and minds and life itself. And so I'm really curious about how do we understand the ways that we've internalized these systems and structures and cultures that we are born and made within, and of course work through things that are ours to carry and take partial responsibility for, but also start to acknowledge the systemic influences outside of ourselves so that we can also shift those structures. So there's kind of quite a big transformative justice lens to my work that seeks to see the human in context.
The first thing that kind of comes to mind in terms of seeing ourselves in context and in some ways putting responsibility, for want of a better word, back where it belongs, maybe in oppressive systems. It feels very de-shaming for a person to realise that, oh, this isn't a personal flaw or failing of mine. I'm actually living under a system that is either not designed for me or doesn't support me in some way.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit more, or maybe even give examples of like how that shows up for people, what people experience that feels like it's theirs but maybe belongs to a system?
Yeah. I mean, I can speak from my personal experience of being a queer man, that there's something wrong with that. There's something perverse, something dirty about that. And I remember when one of my therapists quite a while ago said, and it felt really protective for me, and as someone who's felt maybe a lack of protection around the parts of me that feel most vulnerable in this culture, in this time, to have someone else play that role felt really, really powerful. And he just said, that's not yours to carry. You need to send that back to the Pope. And it was funny, and it also really cut through.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, yeah, that is not mine. And it provoked a kind of rage about the shame that I'd carried. And from some of what I know about shame, it's actually most important to focus on the feelings around the shame than the shame itself. And so the feelings of rage or the feelings of grief that exist around or about the shame, because shame is not necessarily a feeling you want to move further into, because it's completely flooding and often dissociative. And so finding a way to support someone to focus on how they feel about the shame having been so prevalent in their life is mostly what helps us distance from the shame and then work through it. And that was a moment that really helped me do that. Someone to just actually be that fierce protector that I never had and say, that is not yours. Send that back.
Yeah.
And now what's left? And let's talk about that.
What a beautiful moment and intervention by that therapist to so clearly state that, and sounds like it really hit for you.
And I think the humour helped as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is fascinating how Christian our culture actually is, even though compared to a lot of places we probably don't have a huge population that identifies Christian, but our culture is quite informed by Christianity, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. In very unseen and often silent ways.
Yeah.
And because that's such a feature of shame, the kind of secrecy and the silencing, it's so easy to not see that.
Yeah. And maybe not even consciously decide or interpret that I'm different to what the dominant culture expresses, and therefore I'm wrong somehow.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I've been very grateful for particular teachers in my life during my adolescent years that helped me turn what was confusion in my body and angst actually into curiosity and activism. This dissonance between what's so true for me on the inside and what's seemingly wrong on the outside. For many, that's completely overwhelming. But for me, because I felt supported in certain ways, I was able to actually just be curious about that. Like, how is it that something that's so true for me is so not allowed out there? That's actually fascinating. Yeah. And of course, there were so many parts of me that were just shrouded in the termites of shame that at times, through practice, was able to actually just be curious about, wow, inner life, outer life, contradiction, dissonance, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And actually fuels a lot of my curiosity now about how can we develop greater levels of congruence between people's inner lives and outer lives. It's kind of like harmonizing.
And that's part of the work that you do both in therapy and in group and community building, would you say?
Yeah. There's a lot of my work and fascination is about bringing, I guess, our humanity back to life, especially in a world of AI and machine and where we're going, which is a whole other thread. But the human feels maybe more important than ever, and redefining the human. What is human? What's uniquely human? What won't become obsolete, I hope, or at least will maybe take the longest to become obsolete. That feels like the most powerful, potent, resilient, adaptive, healing aspects of kind of what we can bring forth. And they're often the most unseen. That's kind of the hard problem of consciousness. Like, what can we not quantify and measure that maybe brings the most fulfillment to our lives? That's what I'm really curious about, actually bringing back out into the world again through groups, through my work with leadership teams and individuals as well.
Interested, I know a bit about your work with Turning Ground that you've co-founded. Can you say a bit more about what you guys do?
Yeah, very much pulls on these threads of, I guess, replanting the healing arts in communal contexts and recognizing that, yeah, we can do individual therapy, we can do couples therapy, but unless we're starting to create cultural change as well, we're kind of just putting people back out into the same world. We have 50 minutes with them, and then we put them back into the same stream. So unless we're looking upstream at some of the cultural and social forces that are actually shaping our minds and lives, then we're really not doing what we would consider the kind of integrative healing work. And so turning ground. Yes, we do individual therapy, couples therapy, group therapy, but we also run a number of cultural and community programs, a lot around how do we create the capacities to hold difference in a new way. So sitting in the discomfort together as a community and finding bridges. And a lot of our work is also around ecological or nature connection again, recognizing that in our personal lives, we're incredibly dislocated. And for true belonging, maybe it's not just about human to human connection, but it's very much about nature connection. So we're really trying to create communal events and rites of passage that are very accessible, but support us in building those threads of connection back. Yeah.
It's really beautiful to see the way you guys have been building that and running programs that just sound so lovely and deep and connecting and supportive.
Yeah, we're really, soul is a word that feels like a bit of a risk to say, especially in, say, the worlds of leadership and organizational development that I sometimes swim in. But it's a risk that I'm more and more feeling the urgency to take. Like re-ensouling the world feels more necessary than ever. And people kind of don't know what it is that they're moved by sometimes when they come to an event, but they leave moved. And it's kind of a bit of a marketing challenge for us sometimes. People are like, so what do you do? We're like, well, come along.
Yeah.
We could put words to it, and we do try, but there's also something that's, not wordable sometimes.
Yeah. And that people have an experience that, maybe they can't put words to either. Yeah, maybe doesn't fit with how they have been viewing themselves in the world.
Yeah, we're really trying to tap that particular longing that we have, and so we just trust others have. Yeah.
I'm also really curious about the work you do in leadership. Can you say a bit more about what that is and the philosophy behind it?
Yeah, I've just come back from a week of 2 different retreats up north that I was co-guiding. A lot of it's very similar. I kind of take these psychotherapeutic sensibilities and bring it into leadership context because I have experience in that world. So I can speak that language, I can speak this language. A lot of it recently is using nature connection practice as a way to support people in finding new forms of stewardship, in other words, leadership, but that are informed by the patterns of nature and kinds of listening that can happen when you sit in the quiet, contemplative space with nature. There's a particular sensibility, there's a particular ethic that emerges from connection with place that I feel is really important in kind of the decolonizing work, especially in the social enterprise space and the for impact space, which is where I mostly move within. It can still carry a lot of the capitalistic drivers that actually contradict the very impacts we're here to make. And so, a lot of my work is using wilderness therapy as well as group therapies to help people get a little closer to their hearts, to their feet on the earth, and using that to inform a new kind of ethic of leadership that's a little more slow, a little more deep, a little more meaningful, a little more sustainable, and probably a little more modest as well.
I'm curious about how this type of leadership and groups or businesses or companies that are moving into this type of leadership, it sounds very different to traditional capitalistic kind of leadership. What are the differences in profit?
Profit in regards to the motivations of the people coming and how they view that, or?
Maybe that, but also businesses that are leading in this more sustainable way. Is that a slower build in terms of profitability?
Yeah.
And is that not, is there a rejection of being profit driven? How is it viewed?
Yeah, it's a very different scale. So they often talk about the triple bottom line, people, planet and profit, the 3 Ps, where people and planet are valued as equally as profit now, which does mean a correction in expectations, hopes around profitability, and a radical shift in one's values. And yet we all grew up in a capitalistic society for most of us, and so that's there. And so it can lead to a lot of dissonance within an organization, it can lead to a lot of burnout when we're still driven by these capitalistic drivers and at the same time have intense passion for what we're doing, that combination is quite a right recipe for burnout, which then contradicts the impact. And so supporting people in working through their values or redefining values, which often does mean shifting from such high expectations around wealth or financial stature, is a big part of that. And really doing like the radical decolonizing work to take it really sincerely, what it means to really be regenerative for impact, whatever word we want to put on it. But it is a very different expectation and therefore a very different business model, different revenue streams. Need to be really creative with combinations of grants and cash flow and maybe investment. But people really need to think a little more widely around, how they are financially afloat.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really different if you're valuing people, the planet and profit equally. It's a very different focus to traditional capitalistic ventures that, it is profit and you might try and look after the people to maintain your profit, or you might appear to be looking after the planet all, again, in service of profit.
Yeah.
There's to actually be valuing them equally is very different.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I guess, what's now called greenwashing and, these kind of shadow motives that still actually run the show. But now we can use elaborate green language to talk about it and make it seem okay. But that will inevitably just lead to internal conflict within the organization because people are signing up for an impactful job and they want meaning, yet it conflicts what they actually see when they get in there. So, and then you end up just those people end up leaving, and so actually your people become still capitalistic driven. And I guess that's just an example of how it's really the values, the mindset, the behaviors of the leaders who have the most positions of power in the organization that will determine the culture of the organization. It's very self-selecting. Yeah. Which also then maybe leads me to the East-West thing in some way. Just this last week on one of the retreats, we're exploring Eastern views, Western views, and Indigenous views when it comes to mindfulness and also business, and how actually Eastern and Indigenous views of enterprise, it was very much trade economy, and you grow in order to support your people. There is no endless ceiling on growth and growth for profit's sake. It's you grow your business in order to support your family, to have a job in order to survive. And that's just how it is for most of the East and Indigenous cultures. And so the West is kind of coming back to this sense, having just been through rampant growth and industrial mindset. And it's this novel thing. Social enterprise is now novel. But when you look to the East, it's actually just the way it's always been. And so there's a real just modesty about that. But for us, it's this new whiz-bang technology to be both focusing on people and planet and profit. So we're just reflecting on the kind of humility in recognizing, wow, actually, there's a lot we can learn from the East and Indigenous views when it comes to business, which could just be reframed to trade economies. When we think about its actual function in developing, flourishing communities, it's not at all about endless growth. It's about opportunity and resource sharing, and how do we do that in a way that's fair? And
who is the profit for? Who does it serve? Is it one or two people, or can it be, supportive of a much larger group?
Yeah.
I wonder if now is a good time to do a little bit of therapy. A bit of a change of pace. I generally kind of frame it up that, this isn't a regular therapy session, that you're not my regular therapist. And, generally a client and therapist would do a build-up of work together, laying the ground, developing the relationship before diving in the way that we may or may not. And also it's quite different in this setting with lights and cameras and potential viewers. And that my intention with it is to kind of offer myself as a client and you generously offering yourself as a therapist to share a bit behind the curtain, I suppose, of what therapy can be, what therapy with you can be, what particular types of therapy can be. And our intention is to explore a little and just see what happens. Cool. So I will settle myself into the role of a client, kind of shake off the podcast me.
Alrighty.
I feel a little smaller as soon as I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, as we spoke a little bit about before we pressed record, also just to frame it up, maybe exploring what is called the Ideal Parent Figure Protocol together, which is an approach that I will often use as a means to work with attachment material, which we can maybe talk a little bit about afterwards. But is that something you're up for exploring?
Yeah, totally. And I guess just for context, before we were recording, I was telling Al about that I just had kind of a tough week with what felt like attachment stuff, an attachment wound coming up quite strongly, which surprised me and was just really hard to sit with and sad. And yeah, I feel like I'm through the shakiness and unsteadiness of it, but it's still very figural for me now. So, yeah, this feels like a nice process, would you say, or protocol to do.
Yeah.
And I haven't done this before. Well, at least not this particular protocol, maybe something similar. But
And so it is, I guess part of the thinking of it, just so that we're sharing a similar understanding before we go in, is that we're using the power of the imagination to summon ideal parent figures, so they're not replacements of your biological parental figures. They're figures that carry the ideal qualities that know exactly how to meet you, to keep you safe, keep you protected, keep you soothed, etc. And through imagination and the power of imagination, we're accessing the feelings of what it would be like to have those ideal qualities and be met by those ideal qualities, just for a bit of framing.
sounds nice.
Yeah. So I might invite you, if you're okay, to just gently closing down your eyes, and we'll find, starting with the physical body, feeling the chair and the back of the chair. Just on each exhale, allowing yourself just to become a little more relaxed. Maybe on each exhale, just feeling 10% more relaxed. Just as relaxed as you feel safe to be. And then I'll just invite you just to scan back to a sense of yourself, not a particular memory, just a sense of yourself somewhere between the age of 4 and 7 or thereabouts. Just a general feeling sense of what it was like to be you there. Maybe you could share some of what you notice, whether there's feelings, images.
Yeah, I immediately feel quite strong, tough, fierce. I see myself like charging through life.
Yeah. So let's maybe stay close to those feelings, strong, fierce, charging. And from those feelings, using the power of your imagination to create a scene that feels really safe, ideal for those particular feelings. It might be detailed, it might be vague, just beginning to notice.
Shall I describe it?
Yeah.
I see like a lovely garden, and it's very warm, like a very warm sunny day, and the garden's a bit wild, but it has lots of beautiful flowers. And the main kind of thing that strikes me is how warm I am.
So maybe even noticing how you feel that warmth in the body, paying particular attention to that. Even taking a couple of breaths. I wonder if there's anything in particular you notice about where you are in that scene.
I'm kind of at the edge, like just inside it, like I'm inside the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The warmth feels so consistent, like days and days in a row of really warm weather. And there's lots of little insects and bugs, like it's quite an untouched place somehow.
Maybe really noticing how that is for you in your body, that sense of warmth, untouched.
I kind of notice this like voice of mine being like, good, no one's here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How is it to recognize that?
It feels a little sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we welcome that sadness in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm very defended and feisty and don't want anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So noticing how the space, this scene really allows that to be here. I wonder if there's anything in particular in the scene that can help that sadness feel welcome, safe.
Yeah, I see my childhood horses. I can smell them.
Mm-hmm.
They're so lovely.
Yeah. I wonder how it'd be just to concentrate on that relationship between the smell, your childhood horses, and the sadness. Feeling them both together.
Kind of feels like I could let them be there for me. Felt very close to them.
So in a moment, we're very slowly going to begin to imagine ideal parent figures. And we're just going to notice what happens as we begin to welcome them into this scene, knowing that your childhood horses are with you as well. These figures can be as close or as far away as you need them to be. Remembering these are ideal figures. Letting them emerge from the deepest part of your imagination. Maybe you could share how you first noticed them.
Yeah, I see two figures, a man and a woman. And the man's like quite well dressed, like almost in a suit, but not in a rigid way. And he feels very gentle and very open and kind and available. And the woman seems very calm and beautiful, and she's wearing a lovely flowy dress. And she's really happy, like she's a really happy person.
Noticing how it is for you to feel them there together. What that's like.
Yeah, it feels really easeful. It feels like I can be happy. It feels like I can be myself. They're so easy to connect with.
I wonder how you notice their facial expressions. How do you feel they're feeling toward you?
I just feel very light. Like, yeah, they're just enjoying me.
Really breathing into the sense that for them you're the most important thing in the world. Really concentrating on what that's like in your body to get that sense.
Yeah, it just feels so easy. I'm really surprised. It feels... Yeah. I feel light. I feel joyful. And seen. And relaxed.
And from that place, if there's any impulse, or how do you feel to be in the scene?
Yeah, I have this image of just like playing and exploring and having fun and knowing that they're there, like loving and supporting me. Yeah, it's just this lightness and lack of stress, lack of effort. I feel like playing. And yeah, when I think of my horse or horses, but particularly the pony I had at that age, I feel softer. I feel like I can be more loving. Like my heart is more open with him. Yeah.
So maybe taking a moment to really gather up this whole scene. Them there, your pony there. Feelings of softness, openness, warmth. Almost taking a full bodied snapshot of what that's like. Marking that experience in your body before we very slowly start to make our way out, I wonder if there's any particular posture, gesture, place on the body to anchor this state in some way.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like the scene is like printed on my jumper, like kind of printed in my chest, like a photo of this really idyllic, lovely scene.
So maybe from the warmth and the openness cultivated in this space, offering any gratitude or appreciation towards these ideal figures, the scene itself, anything that feels sincere.
Yeah, I feel incredibly grateful to them.
And then staying close to these feelings in your body, noticing that these ideal figures slowly dissolve. Again, staying close to the feeling in your body, noticing that the scene slowly dissolves. And then staying close to the feeling in your body, just maybe bringing light movement back. And before opening your eyes, maybe just taking a moment to check in and mark the difference between how you feel now compared to when we began. Any change in state.
Yeah, I really feel the joyfulness and the ease. The happiness. So
just in your own time, slowly coming back.
Thank you.
So yeah, I wonder if there's anything that felt most striking or stood out to you in either the imagery or the feelings, the process.
It was all very vivid. I'm really surprised by how easy it was to imagine those ideal parents and how willing I felt to just connect with them and, you know, that I wasn't, that feisty little self-protective me immediately trusted and connected with them. Is that typically what happens?
I mean, it can be very different depending on, I guess there's a number of different layers. For some people, simply visualization can be challenging. So it can be a lot of safety building and actually closing the eyes or taking the attention inwards. For some people, there might be guilt around the feeling of replacing parents. And so that might be something that we'd need to work through that prevents us from moving into the imagery. And sometimes, yeah, there's just such ripeness and readiness. Maybe it's because someone has experienced visualization before, they have a meditative practice. Yeah, so there can be many different layers to it. But I
I'm
guess
quite suggestible with hypnosis and yeah.
And for some of us, yeah, the imaginative or symbolic kind of faculty is really open as well. It might be something that we've grown as a capacity for a reason. Yeah. But I guess what this particular process really calls on is I guess it's a real trust in the mind that there's always a seed of what we need, and we can call upon it at any time. And so even after many years maybe of that seed having not been watered, we give it time, we give it attention, we give it space, and it can flood straight back in. And so this is a particular model that doesn't focus on what Western psychotherapy can typically be, which is looking back and looking at deficit or pathology and kind of drudging through that, as opposed to focusing on the seeds that we trust are really there and breathing into them and using the power of the imagination to in some way help the mind self-heal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how just imagining those ideal parents who were free from any worry or stress or, the things that parents, I would say, probably almost always carry in some way, that, it just felt so lovely and light and joyful and
And a big focus of it is because people will often, or sometimes say afterwards, but that was just my imagination. And I guess where this starts to lead into the kind of Eastern philosophical piece is that the way attachment experiences get internalized does then create an imaginative anticipation of relationship. We're constantly anticipating how the other will respond or not. And so it's actually all imagination. And so what we're doing is using the power of the imagination to create a new, what in attachment they would say, internal working model, which is our kind of anticipated responses from caregivers. And creating a new sense of inner security and feeling sense in the body through the power of imagination. So it's more focusing on the actual feeling of that ideal scenario than the image itself.
And I noticed in coming out of it, your instruction to stay with the feeling in my body while I leave the scene and stay with the feeling in my body while the image fades. And that I'm assuming essentially that's what I retain from it, the embodied sense that I experienced.
Yeah. Carrying that, because often there can be quite a jolting or jarring out of the imagery back into the therapeutic relationship. And so paying close attention to what happens for the client when we re-engage into interpersonal relationship is really, really important. And together marking what's happening. Like, is the anxiety or preoccupation beginning as soon as we come back out into this relationship? So that's a very important kind of transition point.
I'm curious about the age range you gave between 4 and 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why it's that particular age range that this protocol uses?
I don't know exactly why, but it has something to do with memory and the ability to retrieve memory, but still being as close to the age of attachment formation as possible. Even though we're not working with memory per se, but at least we can have some kind of felt sense recollection of what it was like to be me at that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this something that, as a therapist, you might use again in the therapy?
Yeah.
Like it's something that you might revisit and do again?
Yeah. If it's something that with the client we've agreed upon would be really useful, if they're coming with, say, something that is showing up in relationship. Obviously, attachment is quite foundational for so many aspects of ourselves, self-esteem, interpersonal relationships, etc. It can be really useful to do this as a core part of our work together, and it takes repetition. And so often we will record that particular visualization and treat it as a meditation between sessions as well. There are pre-recorded ones online, but when we work together, obviously my questioning is in response to your responses, and so it's a lot more targeted. And I think the studies have shown that it takes about 50-minute sessions of this particular visualization work to start to move towards, say, earned security in attachment.
And I know attachment is something that we think about a lot in therapy and we work with a lot in therapy, but I also know people are reading a lot of books about attachment and trying to kind of figure out what their attachment style is. Are you saying that attachment can be healed?
Healed in the sense of we find ways to not cope, but to navigate the particular tendencies that come from our attachment pattern. But of course, attachment shows up differently in different relationships as well, depending on their particular patterns. So my view is maybe not so much about healing attachment, but really accepting and then finding ways to deal with it. And that's what they would call earned security, where it's not necessarily that you're secure in your attachment pattern, but you've found a way to work with your mind as it is in a way that helps you have secure functioning relationships where it's collaborative, it's just, there's co-regulation happening between you, you feel safe. That would be a secure functioning relationship. And two, people with insecure attachment types, so to speak, can have a secure functioning relationship if we find a way to manage the insecurity personally and together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It strikes me that that experience that I just had in that protocol, which was actually different to anything I've experienced before in therapy in terms of where I was receiving the support from, it was really different and lovely. But it strikes me that me having that experience in that exercise just kind of broadens what my mind and body can be aware of, or what I might have capacity to connect with in my life. That I have particular beliefs about relationships and people, and I have my ways of relating and things that happen, and that experience was really different and beautiful. Yeah, I find myself, kind of going, that feeling is possible. That's a feeling I haven't, that actually feels really sad to say, but that's a feeling I haven't had before in terms of just the ease of that relationship in that exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will often also spur on grief about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel sad.
Yeah.
But also very beautiful. And yeah, I'm really keen to kind of practice that experience and get that really familiar in my body.
Yeah, they become really great resources, these ideal parent figures, because you can also do scene-specific visualization. So if someone's coming with a particular challenging feeling in relation to a particular event just in the last week, then we really see how these ideal figures will meet them in that very moment, and they become a real resource to call upon that we can deepen together, but then you can call upon them whenever you feel. Yeah.
And that's something that's such a gift of therapy, that we can learn these things that we can turn to outside of therapy and forever, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is a particular approach that has really changed also practicing as a psychotherapist for me, when it can often, as I was saying before, perpetuate the kind of Western psychological problematization of people's life and minds, and actually deepen that. People come on their way to therapy thinking about what they're going to focus on today and kind of trying to drudge up something that's a problem for me to bring. And actually this takes a more like possibility and potential approach to psychotherapy, less about problem and pathology, more about possibility, and drawing on, the imaginative faculties of the human mind. And I mean, Jung would call it the transcendental function of the mind, the fact that the mind naturally wants to grow and develop. It's an expression of life. And so maybe some of these common approaches to psychotherapy and constantly looking for something to fix kind of completely numbs. It's like a wet blanket, a warm wet blanket over that natural faculty again and again. Whereas this just says, no, there's something in you that knows. Let's see how it emerges and really anchor it and feel it.
Yeah, I mean, you really created the conditions and with some instruction created that space and possibility for my mind to just come up with exactly what I needed. Yeah. It's really lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you to, it's Dan Brown, his work, just to make sure it goes to to him, Daniel P. Brown, who passed a couple of years ago. But he created, and David Elliott, they both created this particular attachment repair model. Yeah. Which is also drawn from Mahamudra, which is a Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And so he kind of took Mahamudra, which part of that they draw from is something called Guru Yoga. And Guru Yoga is you would visualize your guru and any deities or ancestors that are supportive and protective. You visualize them and call on their strength in order to support you in your practice. So they took that practice as well as hypnosis, as well as attachment theory, and created the ideal parent figure protocol. And so I love it because it is really, it's somewhat quite an ancient practice, calling on the energy that kind of we can cultivate just through imagining the positive qualities of those that support us. But then when you tie that with attachment theory, you can have a really particular kind of experience.
Is attachment that something that's particularly interesting to you as a therapist?
I think so, yeah. More and more so through this particular model. Because I do also practice as part of the Bon tradition, which is a Tibetan meditation tradition. And seeing the parallels is absolutely fascinating to me. Yeah, if it wasn't for this approach, attachment would be an interest, but maybe not quite a core interest. But because of how much I've experienced this enable people to actually move into those spaces of possibility as opposed to pathology, yeah, it really revolutionizes therapy for me in some way. And, the research shows that attachment is pretty foundational to a lot of other developmental features that come after that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really our blueprint of how relationships are, how the world is, isn't it?
Yeah, and who we are in all of that. Yeah, inner security.
Just have a little pause here for a moment. I'm so blown away by that protocol. It's really cool. Do you have a feeling of where you want to go next? We haven't really talked about ecotherapy so much.
Yeah. Ecotherapy. Yeah, that would be good to touch on. I'm just thinking which dimensions. There's either like the rites of passage stuff or more contemporary kind of ecotherapy stuff. We could just see what comes.
We could. Yeah. I was going to see if I've got mascara running down my face.
Okay.
And, we can talk a bit more about that Eastern and Western psychotherapy. I'm curious about this idea of growing up and waking up that I think you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, I love talking about that.
Okay. So maybe we'll just, talk about those two things and see where it goes. I guess the Eastern thing kind of follows on from what we were already just saying. So
yeah.
In terms of Eastern philosophy and Western psychotherapy, can you say a bit about this idea of growing up and waking up?
Yeah, they're terms coined, or the person that kind of uses the most is Ken Wilber, who would describe himself as an integral theorist, which is he's attempted, and I think done pretty well, to develop a bit of a framework or a bit of a meta model that ties together some of what we've been speaking about personal, social, cultural, and systemic change, and how all of them are necessary. You can't just change a person and have that be sustainable because they exist within a system. They exist within a culture. There are structures that are supporting them and staying exactly where they are and how they are. And it would be simply overwhelming to maintain it personal change in these structures. So he's come up with this particular theory. He's also come up with a theory of human development that goes beyond the West's theories of development, which typically have something to do with the social self. So the ego development, the development of the self, the person, the individual. And the West has become really good at developing the self. The East, though, has become really good at developing the non-self and states of non-dualism, mystery, whatever you want to call it, states that go beyond the self. And so Ken Wilber's come up with these kind of very accessible models to describe the movements of a person's mind from what he would call growing up, which is becoming a person, to, and part of that is cleaning up. So cleaning up all of the unfinished business, so to speak, that we need to integrate and come to terms with in order to become a person. But then waking up is going beyond your person. And he'll often say you need to become a person before you lose your person. You need to have a self before you lose yourself. Otherwise, that's called bypassing. And it's very easy to look like you're meditating really well, but actually what's happening, if we were to be honest with ourselves, is maybe dissociation, or it's maybe just thinking incessantly about the to-do list. It's very easy these days to kid ourselves into having a spiritual experience or having a non-self. But what's actually happening maybe is we're playing out unfinished business or attachment patterns. And so he would call that the growing up work, which is really important if we are to actually move into what he would say trait change as opposed to state change. We can have a state, but in order to then stabilize it into a new trait or a new kind of epoch in someone's selfhood or development, requires the work of psychotherapy and actually growing up and integrating particular states. So it's always a movement between the two, because we are a self and at the same time we are a non-self. And so, yeah, that's always really fascinated me. And someone who has Indian heritage, and I'm really, really proud of that, and then also Irish and English heritage, and I grew up in the West, I've always really implicitly had an appreciation for the East. And my grandma, was just, and still is, such a great teacher in the invisible nature of things and generosity and virtue and what it means to go beyond the self. But we live in a social world, and it's really important to be able to follow through with what you said you're going to do and have boundaries. So you need to have a self. And so, I really like to situate psychotherapy in that larger context as well, so that it's not because I feel in the West we're yearning for these more transcendental experiences of ourself, of meaning, of greater belonging, of some kind of replacement for spiritual traditions that we've lost. So I really feel that's a sincere longing for a lot of people, that maybe we don't know how to name, but I feel it's there. And so to have psychotherapy just end at developing a self feels like we're missing something. And so I really like this model of growing up and then waking up. And then after that, it's showing up, is in Ken's model, which is then about contribution and service.
That's really cool. I love that third part.
Yeah.
Showing up. As you're speaking, I think about my daughter and my parenting, and how there's this, every now and then I think, I should be teaching her things that I've learnt in terms of my therapy or my spirituality and those kind of things. But it really feels like she's got to just develop as a person and an ego and all of that first, that she needs to do that, and then go to therapy and understand all of that really well, and then, move. I don't know, people often, I've often been to workshops and, learning really great, helpful theories and practices, and someone inevitably says they need to teach this in schools. And maybe, but I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that maybe they just need to develop as people first and explore all of that later. I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
I feel like a bit of both in some way. For me, and I don't have children, I can't wait to. But inevitably there's going to be misses and traumas, and it's part of, I think, human frailty. And I think there are things that our education system can do to support at least creating the right conditions for young people to have not so much unintegrated material along the way, bank up, like being able to name an emotion, which there's a lot of movement in at the moment around EQ, but to at least be able to have some sense of agency over our feelings, regulation techniques, so some ways of minimizing the impacts of traumatic experiences. I think that's definitely something that could do with a bit of work. And yeah, there are going to be things that skip through and they're going to have to go through their own process of cleaning up, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, the boundaries that children are allowed to have these days that my generation just weren't allowed to have is quite incredible. I feel like they're going to be held in really good stead. And I feel like I had to learn all of that as an adult, kind of unlearn all of the politeness and the not rocking the boat that I had taken on board.
Yeah.
I look at the 6-year-olds and think, oh, you're not going to have to unlearn any of that. You've got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there might just be other things I have to unlearn. Like I can't imagine what it's like growing up with tech being what it is and AI and wow, what a world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a totally different landscape, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in terms of your client work, what does that inclusion of Eastern philosophies and practices, what does that kind of look like for your clients potentially?
Yeah. It's usually quite implicit, meaning in the background for me, unless if it's culturally relevant for someone, because I do work with quite a few people of color, of Southeast Asian descent, sometimes I'll explicitly bring it in and it can be really relieving for them because it's also part of connecting to cultural ways and cultural worldviews when that can feel really difficult and isolating, being maybe a migrant. And so it can be explicit, but often it's just me in the background holding in mind that there is a chance that this particular person, beneath all the ways that they might be describing what's happening for them, that there might also be a desire to be growing into particular facets, whether it is service, whether it is these non-self states, then that might be there. And so it's just kind of me holding that also in view in session. It's definitely not something I would really actively put onto anyone. For some people, it's part of what brings them to therapy because they know it is what I work with partially as well. It might be someone who's a meditator but does come up against lots of kind of personal material and wants to work through that, but be able to move into meditation, but then be also to move into the kind of psychotherapeutic working through as well. So that's sometimes explicit and part of our work together. And sometimes our work together might reach a point that things are feeling really good, but now there's a new level of curiosity that's opening up. And it just means we can then move into that. And it might mean exploring whether it's ecotherapy and other aspects of self that go beyond selfhood and into service or into ecology. Yeah, when someone might be ready to actually start moving into that, but we had to get a body of work done first. Yeah, it kind of just is an option on the table. Yeah.
So you're doing the growing up part and then potentially moving into the waking up part.
Yeah.
Holding the waking up kind of, or
mind.
it's holding the work in a way.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say more about ecotherapy? What it is, how it looks?
Yeah. Ecotherapy is very ancient. It kind of holds the view that the natural world is the original healer, it's the original elder, the original therapist, as many Indigenous cultures would know very well, and actually who teach us again and again. And so ecotherapy is kind of where the therapist takes a bit of sidestep and more companioning the client in their relationship with the natural world, as opposed to the therapist and the client being the primary relationship. It's really the client and the natural world being the primary relationship. And as a therapist, I'm just gently guiding, but trying to get out of the way, actually, of that relationship. A lot of it is engaging with the senses again, re-entering the body in relationship with the world, which is incredibly grounding, incredibly resourcing. Sometimes there might be ritual that's important. If someone's at a particular threshold, needs to make a big decision, there might be a marking ritual, which could be like noticing a couple of trees that feel like a bit of a turning point or threshold or gateway for you, feeling the feelings as we approach, working through them. But as soon as we step through that opening, like, let's really let this mark a decision you've just made. So using the natural world as a way to feel the body and to mark your process, it's really welcoming the world in again, which has a lot to do sometimes with existential anxiety and just anxiety itself and depressive mood. We're a very disconnected culture from the living world, and that undoubtedly has a lot to do with how we feel in terms of our sense of safety and empowerment in the world, which a lot of research shows. And so it's seemingly simple to just go out and feel the earth, but that's not at all. It's kind of, one of my teachers, Trail, often says it's natural but very abnormal. Like, it's maybe the most natural thing there is, but it's abnormal in the sense that it's just not how our culture is all the time.
Not what we usually do at all.
Yeah.
I can imagine the effect on the nervous system of that kind of work and developing that relationship with nature.
Yeah. It can often, because I do a fair bit of like initiatory rites of passage work as well, which is time offline in the bush, and it can also be really stirring because the wild isn't just romantic and beautiful, it's also wild and dangerous and scary. And so it's confronting for people as well. But then finding safety in it, which usually takes deep listening and slowness, is incredibly empowering to feel like, I can make fire by friction. I can walk with a blindfold on through the bush at night and feel my way around. And like, that's quite extreme, but the kinds of confidence and inner safety that someone can build through feeling safe in the wild is quite remarkable. But there's often a beginning spike of fear because it's not just predictable and it's messy. And
I remember when I was a teacher, we went on school camp and we went for a bushwalk and we were out for about an hour, and these were city kids in Northcote, lovely kids. And so we did this bushwalk and we came back around the route and back to where we were staying and stepped onto these concrete steps. And one of the kids said, "Oh my God, thank God, concrete." Like, that was so relieved to kind of be back in something that was so structured and steady, and, it had been confronting for them to be out walking in the bush for an hour.
And it is a real edge for people. Like, it's also not for everybody, ecotherapy, depending on where they're at and culturally what's normal, what's safe. There's also been difficult experiences in nature for some people. So it's really not for everybody.
Yeah.
But I've personally found it really, really supportive for my own sense of belonging and, nervous system, like safety.
Yeah, can you describe some of the things that you've done, time that you've spent, or how does it look?
Yeah, I've just come back from a month in Colorado in the US, where I used to live 11 years ago. And part of that was a vision quest, which is a traditional rites of passage initiatory process that a lot of different Indigenous cultures have a version of. So here in Australia, it's the walkabouts for Indigenous Australians, which is usually a coming of age ceremony. So it's when you are ready to become an adult, really. You go out onto the land by yourself and you listen, and usually there's a fast involved, so you're really sacrificing something as well and becoming sensitized to the world, and you listen for the ways that nature's always mirroring us in its cycles and seasons. And through listening, you get some clues as to what your role is here, what your gifts are. And then you come back to the community and you become an adult which means you give your gifts and you take on responsibility for the village. And so they're very missing rites of passage in our contemporary society, which is a lot in. But for me, I have set a number of vision quests. Sometimes they are me going out looking for guidance as to what's coming next. How do I want to make a choice at a particular turning point? Sometimes they're just marking ceremonies. So I've just been through a big chapter of, say, a family process, and I just need to really honor that that's finished and kind of claim what that meant for me. And time in the bush by myself is really important for that. And then just nature connection practices, like doing workshops where you are learning to make fire by friction, or you are learning bird language and how to listen to the language of the forest, which is often bird songs. And what's the difference between an alarm call, a companion call? How can you tune in to the language of birds? And all of that just for me feels like my nervous system softening into our wider body of the earth. And it's just so fun, first of all, to be using your hands and doing manual labor, learning cool skills, weaving, crafting, carving. But then also it's empowering to know that really, if shit hits the fan, I've got some skills. To not be so dependent on convenient culture is incredibly empowering as well.
Yeah, I'm really struck by how lacking our culture is in rites of passage and transitions and marking and honouring things that we have been through, travelled through. And I imagine that, I'm imagining teenagers, and that as teenagers we probably somehow make up our own rites of passage in the absence of the ones that might have been there once upon a time.
Yeah.
And then that's probably not so supportive, potentially.
Yeah. I don't know if Gabor Mate talks about it, but there's definitely, Francis Weller, who's a beautiful author, does talk about self-initiation and addiction. And it's that age of agitation that an elder in a functioning culture would notice and say, hey, you're ready. Here's a ceremony. We'll be here when you get back to receive you fully and honor you as a man or a woman or an adult human. But you must go now by yourself into the woods and listen deeply. And we don't have someone to say, hey, you're agitated, you're ready to grow up. It's like, hey, stop being annoying, you're being frustrating, you're not fitting in, you're whatever it is.
Be different.
Yeah, further agitating, further isolating. And so I really believe that we are trying to self-initiate in many ways, but we just don't have the supports. And that's part of the predicament. We have very few elders because we don't have initiation. But we also don't have initiation because we don't have the elders to guide it and tell us, show us the ropes. And so we are needing also to self-initiate, but in hopefully a different way, by retrieving the kind of lost lessons and rights.
Do you run, or are there initiations available for people in communities like ours?
Yeah, there's a few organizations that do a lot of nature-based work that, I've participated in and co-guide in as well. One is with Claire Dunn from Nature's Apprentice. She runs the nature-based leadership training with series as well. I'd highly recommend checking that out. It is a 9-month-long leadership training program, and part of it is usually a vision quest or a ceremony of that type, plus a lot of other really great programming. There's quite a number of nature connection groups, like Nature Philosophy up on the Northern Rivers. They do really fun camps where you learn all the nature skills, and they're just fun and light and playful. And then turning around, we intend to begin doing more and more nature connection practices. We just ran in April Seasons of the Soul, which was a community event where we're really supporting people in getting more in touch with the seasonality of the world outside them, but also their own inner seasonality and the relationship between the two. So using ritual, nature connection practice, food, song, music, gathering to together start to find our place in this particular land as well. So we're also edging further into that space.
Look forward to seeing what you guys do. I feel like anything else particularly that you wanted to touch on? We'll cut this bit out.
Yeah.
Maybe like groups we haven't maybe really, but...
Yeah. I wonder... It doesn't have so much energy around it for me. Groups.
I have a question about the robust self and compassionate self. I mean, we can finish. We don't have to say anything else, but just,
Yeah.
if there was more, we can do it.
The robust self and compassionate self. Did I use those words? Or did you?
I don't know, maybe
ChatGPT.
talking shit. I mean,
I wonder if
it
that's...
cannot be trusted.
I mean, I would just relate that straight back to the kind of growing up, waking up piece.
Yeah.
And the kind of self that does have boundaries, and then the porous self that's effervescent and compassionate and boundless.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it'd probably just be back in that territory. Yeah, I don't know. I also need to go to the toilet. So that's
Well, let's do that. And then
Okay.
if anything occurs to you while you're there,
Yeah.
we'll still have 15 minutes by then.
Okay.
And if not, we can just finish up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. It's been a great chat.
Yeah.
And that protocol was unreal.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Pretty incredible.
I loved it.
It's so beautiful as a therapist as well. To, like, at the end of the day, if I've even just had a couple of sessions that are IPFP, I feel dramatically different. Like I get so much energy from delivering it
Yeah.
because you're in it, in the imaginative with them, as opposed to just focusing on trauma work or reprocessing something. Like it's so opening.
So nice.
Yeah.
I want to learn it.
Yeah.
Use it.
I can send a couple of podcasts across about it, like the studies behind it as well. But the manuals are pretty thick, like comprehensive guide to attachment repair with David Elliott and Dan Brown.
Yeah, cool.
Dan's just an absolute genius.
Yeah.
Was.
I'm still reeling from the protocol.
IP, yeah.
So good. Really loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Really, like I often feel it as just like a whole other world exists 1 millimeter either side of our default narrative, schema, whatever language you want to use. But it's just like such a deep groove, and just 1 inch to one side is a whole other experience of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that I really get that feeling when I'm receiving the IPFP as well.
And I think what seems so amazing to me is that those ideal parents were just invented in my mind, and yet I received something so beautiful from them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as you say, it's all invented in our mind, essentially,
Yeah.
in the current moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
based on what we've experienced. But it's all imagination to some extent, isn't it?
Yeah. And then it's the same with integrating, whether it's psychedelic experiences or that movement between growing up and waking up for people. Because some people will then say that, it was all just, I actually had those feelings in relation to just these ideal figures, but then all their doubts or beliefs would come about it. Oh, but you put them there. It's like, no, I didn't. Like, you begin to notice how all of these other beliefs begin to flood in to doubt or undermine that experience very, very quickly. And so as soon as you come out, you're very quickly trying to mark out how people's default mode is flooding in and just helping them see it. It's almost like you're just popping the balloons around it constantly, because they will flood in and will doubt the experience.
Yeah.
And they'll feel so real, the doubts. But they're also just that. Because that was also so real.
Yeah. Yeah, that the doubts are no more real than
Yeah.
that experience.
It's itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
If this conversation resonated with you, hit subscribe and click the link below to download the Source app. It's free to get started and helps you find a therapist who truly fits fast.